I am Paul. I am the bus driver for the Gravediggers tour here in Dublin, Ireland. It's been going over 10 years. It's a successful Friday night out in Dublin. We scared the bejesus out of everybody. It's good fun. Come on the tour because I need the work.
So I found this Instagram account called Hidden Dublin Walks and Tours, and I decided to book into the Gravediggers Ghostbus tour. The Gravediggers Ghostbus tour might sound a little similar to something I did a couple of years ago, but that tour was centred more on ghost stories of Dublin and jump scares. Now this tour does have a few of them.
And I don't know if you believe in coincidence, but on the Ghostbus we do know better. You know we have it, and it gets you every time.
For the most part, the Gravediggers Ghostbus tour focuses more on actual historical events and stories, things like the plague, the phenomenon of grave robbing, etc.
And you're all very welcome on board the Gravedigger Ghostbus tour this evening. If you have a plague mask and you'd feel more comfortable wearing it, work away. I've had the plague myself twice, do not recommend it. Are you the last? Fabulous. I want to tell you a tale now about a man called Oliver who was locked up in the Black Dog Jail. Now the Black Dog Jail was situated in a part of Dublin so charming, even the locals referred to it as hell. And if you take a look around now, folks, I'll welcome you all to hell. Back in my day, it was wall-to-wall taverns and brothels. We'll ignore the elementary school and the gym, though to be fair, depending on your persuasion, both of those could be considered hell as well. Am I right? I should say, I've not been hired for the jokes, purely for the body. Onwards! Dublin was in an awful state, war-ravaged, plague-ridden, and there was a petition sent in to the General Assembly. This petition stated that the sole reason for the plague, all the death, destruction, pain and despair it brought with it, was due to the fact that Dubliners, much like today, swore too much. And all this swearing and cursing had brought the wrath of God down upon us because we were blaspheming heathens. And if that's the case, we're still fecked. Because we kind of use it as punctuation. It's a bit of a problem. So folks, this is Kilmainham Jail. I guarantee you're all already familiar with Kilmainham Jail. If you ever saw the original Italian Job, all the original prison scenes were filmed here in the A-Wing. And more recently, and dare I say it more importantly, Paddington 2.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Kilmainham Jail. It's a place where hundreds and thousands of us walk this long, long way to the gallows to be hanged.
Where are we from? Leeds. Oh, beautiful. Right, NHS, you're grand. The fear is always if one of the Americans gets too close. I mean, you'd have to remortgage the house for the antibiotic, wouldn't you? That's the real scary story of this bus. Folks, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the plague because it's a very infectious subject. Remember, hired for the body, not for the jokes. It was generally believed that it was the deliberate concealment of sick family members that was causing the disease to hang around and spread as ferociously as it did. The authorities decided that they'd bring in these regulations that stated that failure to inform them within 24 hours of plague sick appearing in your household could result in 80 days imprisonment. If the plague sick family member was still alive at the time the authorities found the family had hidden them, oh, things got much worse. The entire family were rounded up into the family home and they were shut in. The windows were sealed and the door was barred shut and they were left. 80 days after the family were shut in, the authorities would go in, the bodies would be removed and they'd be either burned or buried, no longer posing a threat to the rest of the city.
And of course, the Gravediggers Ghostbus tour ends with a jar at the Gravediggers Pub.
We're heading out towards Glasnevin and we will park up beside a little pub called Kavanagh's. Now, Kavanagh's is more affectionately referred to as the Gravediggers. Back in the day when grave digging and indeed grave robbing was big business. And you fancied a pint and the landlord didn't want you bringing your mucky boots in. The way to let him know is you would take your coins and you'd place them on the end of your shovel, and you could slide that shovel through a purpose-built hole in the wall. And then you would wait the appropriate amount of time for your pint to be poured. And when you felt the weight shift on your shovel, you would draw it back out slowly, and there would be a nice creamy pint of the black stuff. And sure, if anybody has brought a personal shovel with them this evening, you could give it a go. If not, you could always go in and order your drinks the boring way.
Welcome to my favourite place in Dublin, Glasnevin Cemetery. Now, I'm going to show you guys what a gravedigger does. We just simply keep on pulling and pulling on the neck until we can't no more. And then we break the collarbone. And then we break the ribs, the shoulder blades, until everything becomes...
I wouldn't mind, but I was on the bus actually thinking I would love a pint from Gravediggers right now. I'm so glad they brought us out here, even if I have to drink it in plastic. Oh wow, it's still really good in plastic. One thing I thought was really interesting is that the more of these kind of tours I do, the more everything links together. I learned that story about putting your shovel in for the pint on this tour, but on the Perfect Pint tour, I had learned the story behind why it's called a jar at the Gravediggers.
It's also home to the saying, do you want to go for a jar? So originally there was a shortage of glass during the wartime in Ireland. The gravediggers used to bring in their jam jars into John Kavanagh's and fill them up with Guinness. And that's where that saying came about, are you going for a jar?
That's really interesting.
Have I talked to you at all about the disease? I haven't really. Disgusting infection. Spread very easily through inhalation, ingestion, the slightest abrasion of skin. And most people, if they're lucky, death is swift from heart failure. And the unlucky ones can find themselves working on a bus trying to entertain tourists. I would like to thank you so much for joining us this evening on board the Gravedigger Ghostbus tour. I hope you've enjoyed being my victims as much as I have enjoyed victimising you.
There are 2 actors on this tour, one plays multiple roles. The humour and personality that they bring is really, really good. I really enjoyed it. As always, I'm trying to give you a taste of this tour and not give the whole thing away. There's way more involved in this tour than the 7 or 8 minutes that I've showed you here. But if you don't want to listen to me about why you should do the tour, why don't you listen to Paul, the bus driver? Thank you so much to my patrons for making these videos possible. I would not be able to do this without you. On my Patreon, I do create exclusive content in return for people's support. If you want to support the channel in a different way, if you're coming to Ireland on holiday anytime soon and you want some recommendations on things to do, you can actually go to my website and order an itinerary. The company that runs this tour also runs something called a horror hike. So if you'd be interested in me doing the horror hike, like this video and let me know down below in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you in the next one. Slán slán.